us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Fox News Talk 1240.
Live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's Nooganomics with David Tulis.
Well, local economy needs people such as Dr. Danielle Mitchell to take on the Goliath, take on the giant, take on the gigantic bureaucracy, which is the world of third-party payers, insurance. She has for years been frustrated with the sick care model, as she calls it, the paternalistic model of payments that turns patients and doctors and their relationship into a kind of bureaucratic dealing and not a personal relationship where time is available to help the patient pays for what he or she is getting in the way of care and service, and there is time available because the doctor in the alternative model is suddenly freed from the tyranny of the form and of the coding that beleaguers every practicing physician, and probably even my listeners, doctor, and maybe even your dentist. So this is David Tulis, and I do welcome you here to our show. We're going to talk with Danielle Mitchell, who owns and runs Chattanooga Sports Institute, and she is an Oregon native and has been here for 4 years and has been in her practice for a couple of years you're right near Access Family Pharmacy here in Hickson.
Yeah, so I'm right down the street, actually, closer to the McCamey Animal Shelter.
Right, that's right between those two well-known landmarks. Well, you were doing something different, Danielle Mitchell, in local economy. You're stepping out of a national economy model that's highly impersonal and highly bureaucratized, and you're doing something different. You're trying to get to connect with the people you serve. Tell us about your patients and what you're hoping to accomplish in their favor by making this change, and what are you changing your practice to?
Well, that's a wonderful question, David. And first off, thank you so much for having me on your show. One of the things that I've noticed over the last few years working as a physician, I work as a family physician and as a local sports medicine physician. And one of the things that I've been noticing is that we are operating in what I call the sick care model of medicine. And so the sick care model of medicine is basically this big, I guess, as you call it, the Goliath of all these forces that are coming together that I really truly believe are impacting our healthcare outcomes, and they're impacting them in a way that is not positive. So take, for example, what is the average experience of the patient that is going in to see their doctor now? I see this time and again, and my patients have oftentimes complained of it before they've actually come in to see me as their physician. So a lot of times you will go and you will call to schedule an appointment with your doctor, and you're told you can't see your doctor for sometimes 1, 2, 3 months out, depending on what you're requesting. A lot of times urgent care appointments aren't available. And so when you actually do finally have that appointment slot that you go to see your physician for, you walk into the waiting room and there's 20 people sitting there waiting to see the same physician or multiple providers in the practice. You end up waiting 1, 2, 3 hours sometimes to see your physician. And then when you do finally get there, sometimes you're surprised. You're not even seeing your physician. It might be another provider in the practice that's covering for them. The exchange at that point that is face-to-face is really where I believe the quality of the healthcare outcome occurs. And that exchange now is probably on average less than 5 minutes. Doctors and healthcare providers are under such intense pressure to see so many patients per day. On average, most family physicians are seeing anywhere from 20 to 30 patients a day, sometimes more than that. And so that face-to-face interaction is lost. They are in, they are out, and they are on to the next patient. A lot of times, my patients have told me, I had one patient time their interaction with their physician 2 minutes and 14 seconds. I mean, 2 minutes and 14 seconds, the doctor was in and out, the prescription was given, and that was it. And so that's really, it's very easy to think and point a finger and say, that's the physician's fault for doing that. But really, there's also a healthcare crisis that's happening within this bigger healthcare crisis. And that's that physicians are extremely overburdened. This system, and as we're talking about how insurance plays into this, is really creating a high volume, less quality system, and doctors and patients are really upset about it and they don't like it. So you might ask, what is that bigger issue that's going on? Well, so when you look at the way that insurance companies, I believe, are impacting the system, the payment for service has remained usually flat, or in some cases even going down. Medicare, which is the standard that's used to reimburse healthcare entities, Medicare payments, I like to joke and say they don't even make it into the bottom of the barrel. A lot of patients have difficulty if they are on Medicare trying to find physician practices that still accept Medicare as a payment plan, because the reimbursement is just that poor with it. So then you have other insurance companies, and I won't name names, but there are definitely insurance companies out there who reimburse even less than what Medicare is reimbursing. So you create this profit loss in a system, right, where you're seeing patients, but you're not reimbursed for the time that you're spending with them. And so the alternative, and this is what you see in corporate medicine, is to schedule physicians for more and more and more patients on their schedules, which translates to the patient having less face-to-face time with their doctor, which translates to doctors being very dissatisfied with their practice and the way that their career is going. Corollary.
And also the doctor tends to view the patient not in human terms anymore, but in terms of cost and in terms of trouble. And, oh, here's that patient whom I know is going to require me to spend 15 minutes dealing with my assistant on paperwork and calling the insurance company about non-payment, let's say, or something like that.
Right. It has these unintended consequences where suddenly a patient that, like you said, might require 15 minutes of your time,
that's being taken is not in medical care, but it's in paperwork in the back office after that patient's already left. That's the part I'm saying is why that patient is an ugly duckling for the doctor.
Yeah, so when we look at things like prior authorizations, which are oftentimes required for ancillary studies, I have prior authorization requests. This is how ridiculous it is. I have certain patients who come to me. They want to change their lives in that way. So they want to basically go through a supervised withdrawal to be off of the medicines entirely. And what we tend to see is that insurance companies, even though I'm dose reducing that patient on stuff, insurance companies are requiring that I do a prior authorization every single month for that medicine just so they can take it and properly withdraw, even though I'm reducing them on the dose.
Well, we're talking with Dr. Danielle Mitchell, who runs Chattanooga Sports Institute on Access Road?
Yes, North Access.
North Access Road. And we're hearing you're bemoaning the situation of patients and doctors in this trap of insurance. Now, let's make it really clear what your solution is. You are a doctor, a pioneer doctor in Chattanooga, turning to the cash model. Now, explain what that is. Explain what the cash model is and how you have you're trying to phase out of the insurance model that has your ankle in the steel trap.
So that's a great question. So one of the solutions that I'm offering up to help me have more face-to-face time with my patients, because that's where I really truly feel like the quality of the interaction happens. You have to spend more than 5 minutes of time with patients to get good quality healthcare outcomes. So what I've offered is there's a 3-option system that we're slowly phasing into here over the next few years. And it was with the intention of phasing out insurance companies altogether. So the first system is what I call a medical membership model. And this model essentially costs people $50 per month. So per member, that would be $600 a year. And we bill it in 3-month installments. And what that buys you is essentially 4 30-minute office visits with me as your physician. And those office visits can be used for everything. If you want to come in and have your physical, if you break your arm, if you have like nutritional concerns and you want to discuss like a healthy lifestyle plan, which by the way, a lot of insurance companies won't pay for that. Some of them do now, and it's been mandated by the Affordable Care Act for some plans, but most of them will not if you go in to talk to your doctor about obesity. So those visits, you can use them entirely as you wish. The other nice discount that medical members get is this dramatically decreased or discounted rate towards ancillary services. So like, I'm a sports medicine physician. I do a lot of stuff with like, bone, tendon, joint, muscle aches. I have x-ray on site. So if you need x-rays for something, instead of, paying like for a set of 3 x-rays on average, which is $40 to $60, you might, on our plan, on our medical membership, people pay $10 per film. If you have a sore throat and you need a strep test, $10 for the strep test. The really cool thing too that we're doing is all of our prices are posted online. So you can go, yeah. So you can actually go in.
These are called real prices, right?
These are real prices.
My listener will pay the price that he finds on your website. By the way, what is the website?
www.chattanoogasportsinstitute.com.
Chattanoogasportsinstitute.com with Dr. Danielle Mitchell. Okay, that's the first of the option, probably the most attractive option, Danielle. That's called the membership model, for which my listener would pay $600 a year. Let me ask you this: if he pays in cash all at once, does he get any kind of discount?
If he pays in cash, so he's already discounted at that point, actually. And when you look at, that's a great question. When you actually look, I invite people to go to the website. On the left side of the website, you'll see an option for pricing. Go through and look at those prices, because then when you start to see like what members actually get for a discount, like for my labs, if you come in and you need to have like blood tests done, what I do is I pass along my discount that I get through the lab. So people are getting, like, a lot of times they think, you know what, if I go in and I see you as my doctor for my physical and I have to have my blood work, and my blood work, that's now going to a separate entity, oh my gosh, I'm going to pay like hundreds of dollars for physical exam lab work. In reality, that lab work costs about $20 to $30.
The second model that you have, Danielle Mitchell, is the pay-as-you-go. And talk about that as an option. That's, I guess, your second favorite option. But the listener that may suit him. How does that work?
Yeah. So just yesterday, I was talking with one of my patients who's evaluating the plan, and he said, I'm pretty healthy. I don't see myself going into the doctor 4 times a year, but I might go maybe a couple times. And so that's really where I've created what I call the pay-as-you-go plan, which essentially bills out at $60 per 15 minutes of block time used. So the patient still has a lot of control over how much time they want to see me as their doctor. And it's basically based on the time that they consume. And again, it's in 15-minute blocks. They still get a discounted rate towards my ancillary services, but it's not quite as much as somebody who's a member, because that's part of the perks of being a member. Also, being a member ensures that you have continuity with me over years. If somebody thinks, well, I'm just going to stay in the pay-as-you-go status, as our membership base grows, which I hope it does with this plan, then eventually we will be seeing the same for a time period of years, but there's a cap to how many people that I keep in that membership model, which is another perk, because most people on the quote-unquote sick care model of medicine, most physicians have to carry somewhere between 1,500 to 2,000 patients to have a sustainable practice. On our membership model, we're looking at carrying anywhere from 700 to 800, which means when you call to schedule an appointment with your doctor, you're not waiting months and months at a time to see them.
Well, that's certainly very attractive, and it sounds like what you're saying, Danielle Mitchell of Chattanooga Sports Institute, will stimulate real demand. I think now demand is muffled. People dare not approach the system because of delays and uncertainty in payment and forms and worries. And let me ask about if my listener, let's say, buys a membership, and let's say that he and his wife and his family are very healthy in a given year. Is there time that they have bought from you? Can they convert it? Here's the problem. There's a poor woman who lives 3 houses down. She has 2 children. Her car is often smoking. She's harried. She has two part-time jobs, and she's stressed out for daycare for her children when she's on the job. And my listener knows about this woman's situation, and he wants to afford her some social capital, right? He wants to afford her some help. Can he take the unused time that he bought from you, transfer that to her, as a form of currency. In other words, can his purchase of your time be converted into a kind of an asset that he can use in exchange? In this case, he would be giving it to her as a donation. He's saying, look, I know this great doctor, and I've already paid for you to have some visits with your children. You have a couple of visits. Is that something that's possible? Because that would expand my listener's prospect for charity, since he's a very healthy person. He shops local, and he eats homegrown food from the farmer's market, so he's probably a healthier guy than the next man. But he does have this interest in his neighbor, and he'd like to know about the use of your receipt, as it were, as a form of currency, which he can pass on as a kind of a claim upon you to that woman down the street.
Yeah, so that's an interesting concept. I've never really thought of it in that fashion before, but one of the things that people get to know about me right away, being their physician, is that I went to med school to be a doctor and take care of people, number one. And, and what I'm hearing from your explanation here on the situation is it really does actually get at some of the altruistic things that we do as physicians. We want to take care of people. And one of the nice things about being the boss of my business is if I hear something like this and I'm like, yeah, this woman's in a really bad way. And if this gentleman who's a member can afford to pass along one of his visits to her, I would certainly be open to that idea with stuff.
I guess that's called the barter economy in some ways, Danielle. Well, okay, so we talked about two membership models that you have. There are three. The last one, which you describe only holding your nose, I guess, is the insurance model. So the first one is the ideal is the cash model of services at Chattanooga Sports Institute for $600 a year. The pay-as-you-go model, did you say how much that is per year also?
The pay-as-you-go model is basically going to be determined by how many times.
Okay. So there's no set amount ahead of time. Okay, so it's as you need it, you pay as you go.
Yes.
And then the third model, which is where you are now, you told how many hundreds of patients do you have now at Chattanooga Sports Institute, and who are they, and how are they paying you?
Well, I'm proud to say that we're going to be celebrating 2 years this November of being open as an independent clinical entity, and we have close to 900 patients at this time. I have spent literally very little money on advertising for my practice. It's all grassroots referral, which is an incredible compliment, I feel like, to me as a provider, because that means other people are going out and telling people about my practice and how it's vastly different from the big medical machine that's out there right now.
Well, how is it vastly different if you're still taking insurance?
That's a good question. So even though I'm taking insurance right now, what I'm doing is I'm still spending time with people, talking about the altruism of being a physician and taking care of people. Oftentimes, if you go in and you read articles that are listed over this model right now, there's one on Nooga.com that talks about this. Quite a few people actually came in and commented about the care that I have delivered to them. And it's very flattering to see that people realize there is extreme quality in what they would eventually be paying for on the membership. But right now, that third option that you're talking about, which is people who still want to use their insurance. And here's the big key with this. So insurance companies, when a provider is listed, them. In-network essentially means that you are getting the insurance company's contracted rates for those services with that provider. And if I choose to say to the insurance company, you know what, I don't want to play this game anymore, I want to deliver better healthcare outcomes to my patients, I am going to step outside of your network and become what's called out of network. What you see translate to your insurance benefits is there's an in-network deductible and an out-of-network deductible. So if I come through, and this is what we're trending towards right now, I'm going to be looking at insurance companies, seeing which ones are the poorest paying, the most difficult to work with, which is a biggie for me. I'm going to start eliminating those insurance plans. So I would become out of network for those plans. Those are people who are going to become eligible if they choose to keep their insurance with that plan. Those are going to be people who become eligible for membership. Also people who are uninsured. So if somebody calls up and says, you know what, I'm uninsured, I want to be a member with stuff, then you are completely eligible for membership. On that third model that I'm talking about, the third payment option plan where I still use traditional insurance, as my membership base grows, then I will be holding those people to a 15-minute office visit format. So they're still getting on average 3 times the amount of time that a provider would spend with them on average. But I'm really trying to get people to realize that your health is worth it. Spend time with a doctor who's willing to spend time with you.
This is David Tulis. Thanks for giving us a few minutes of your time. We're talking with Dr. Danielle Mitchell, who runs and owns and founded Chattanooga Sports Institute here in Hickson. I wanted to mention Trade Bank of Chattanooga. We're members of Trade Bank, which is the smarter way to barter and improve your cash flow. We trade among 400 local businesses in every field. Call 877-2202 to learn more, 877-2202. Well, Dr. Mitchell, you make reference to the paternalistic model and the sick care model of medicine. Do these systems favor an interest that you have, which is in nutrition?
Absolutely. So this is one thing.
They do care about nutrition, these models?
The models that I'm introducing are very much founded in nutrition and activity and what I call true preventative medicine. The paternalistic models do not.
Do not. Okay, got it.
Do not.
Right, understood.
So one of the things that I bring to my practice, which I think is extremely unique, and this is, I hope, changing as medical institutions across our nation are training physicians and healthcare providers more in using an interdisciplinary approach to nutrition and healthy lifestyle, but also training physicians, physician assistants, nurse practitioners on the real basis of what good, healthy nutrition is. So my experience, if you knew me back in 2007, I was actually diagnosed as being morbidly obese. I'm 5'6" in height, and I was almost 250 pounds. And I decided that I was going to make a huge difference in my life. And so I made a change. And through adopting a real passion and love and educating myself on nutrition, I lost almost 100 pounds. And not only did I lose 100 pounds, but I really pulled out what I call the inner athlete in me. So I was marathoning. To date, I've gone on to finish 6 full iron distance Ironman triathlons. I'm in training right now for Ironman Chattanooga, which will be my second time doing this particular race this September. And so what I do to make myself really stand out amongst the crowd for providers is that I talk the talk and I walk the walk. If you come into me for your physical, and I've had this what I call a compliment now, time and again, is that people say, no doctor has ever talked to me about eating healthy. They'll give you a handout and say, here, you just need to eat better and exercise. But they never sat down to talk about, like, how do you implement that? And I'm also, I think, very much interested in debunking a lot of the myths that are out there about nutrition. So, you know, the low-fat craze, one of the worst things I think that's ever happened to health, in my opinion, with stuff, and nutrition as well. So I just really bring all those things together, and I try to have my patients really who are interested in wanting to make that change, I help launch them into this healthy lifestyle and get them to understand it's not an overnight change. This is a journey. We're talking with Danielle Mitchell of Chattanooga Sports Institute. Danielle, how can my listener get a hold of you? Great question. So our phone number, if you'd like to call and schedule an appointment, is 423-875-1005. Our website is www.chattanoogasportsinstitute.com, and we are also on Facebook. You can find me personally on Facebook as well, and we also have an email address, Chattanooga_sports_institute@yahoo.com. So what you're doing is, Danielle Mitchell, you are part of a force for decentralization in a medical model which is highly centralized, highly bureaucratized, and extremely brittle. Yes. Trying to actually get more of an interaction going face-to-face with patients and their physicians, creating a quality relationship that over time will create better healthcare outcomes. Danielle Mitchell, thanks for joining my listener and me here at the David Tulis Show. Thank you for having me. This is David Tulis. I do thank you for giving me a couple of minutes of your time. Call Danielle Mitchell at 875-1005. She's part of the counter-revolution against the revolutionary state and its cartels, namely those of the insurance field. I've got some things I want you to hear. Hang on. This is David Tulis. We're trying to figure out how local economy has solutions to national crises. There are several of them. There is the national crisis of the Muslim invasion of American life, with sometimes bullets spewing from the muzzles of AK-47 style
rifles. And the solution, according to one of my recent guests, is prayer and that every man be armed. That is, in fact, a local solution to a national problem that can't be solved by us asking people in Washington to do something for us. In another field, that of medicine and the payment for medical expenses, we have a national solution that has caused innumerable problems for people. It has made medical care alien and remote. It has put tremendous stress on the doctor profession, the medical profession, whose members sold their souls to the national government under President Johnson, and the idea of free continuing money rolling in from Medicare and Medicaid, but they are most all of them in a severe and sore servitude and bondage, I would like to suggest. But some of them, some doctors, such as Dr. Danielle Mitchell of Chattanooga Sports Institute here in Hickson, is seeing the way out, and she is turning to the local economy model of care, and also the means of paying for care, which is where you, my listener, think in terms of your doctor and your relationship. You always think through the insurance grid. Is it possible for you, my listener, to think outside of that insurance grid? What's the answer to that question, Dr. Mitchell? Can my listener think outside of insurance when he thinks about medical care? What's his hang up? What's his problem?
So whenever people are evaluating our medical membership model as something, is this right for me? I think there's a lot of things that go through their mind. And the first one is, well, why would I pay an extra $50 a month per person in my family to take advantage of a model like this? And there's multiple reasons for that. Number one of the biggest things that you can do on our medical membership model is, if you are somebody who is of average health, and let's say you go to the doctor 2 to 4, 5, 6 times a year, you will actually save money on this model, and here's how. So if you're somebody who's not anticipating large medical expenses like surgeries, the birth of a child, things that are really going to hit your deductible in a very large way, then what you can actually do is, if you have the opportunity through your employer, or if you're buying your healthcare coverage on the healthcare exchange, what you can do is actually evaluate different plans and get what was classically known as a catastrophic plan, meaning that your deductible, your in-network and out-of-network deductibles will go up, but the amount that you pay on your monthly premiums will go down. And so if you're somebody who doesn't anticipate, a major medical issue that's going to cost a lot of will over time on your monthly premiums, and in part that money you save can then be used to pay for your medical membership fees. The other reasons that I would really talk to people about why you want to consider a medical membership model, and hopefully more practices that adopt this model, which I will say as a sidebar note, more practices are going to be looking at going to this right now across the nation. There's probably anywhere from 5 to 10% of primary care practices that are getting rid of the insurance model because it is impacting healthcare delivery in such a dramatic way. So with this movement towards medical membership, what I really want to stress to people is, I keep talking about the 30-minute office visit format. That is so incredibly important. So when I talk about my what I bring to my practice in terms of true preventative medicine, one of the oaths that I took as a physician was first do no harm. And then my second one that I've adopted over the years is put the prescription pad down, because that is the quick fix for stuff, and the quick fixes are not long-term solutions. And those quick fixes, those lead to bigger healthcare bills, more money paid out of pocket over years with stuff, poor health outcomes. So I'm really about sitting down, talking to people, what is the big issue that's going on in your life that is causing this outcome with stuff? And I really seek the long-term solutions, which for me, in my practice, I focus on 4 things. Nutrition, that's 80% of the equation right there. Right now, we are in a time where the consumption of processed foods is so high, and I think that's underscoring so much of our poor healthcare outcomes. Number 2, activity. We don't exercise. We don't like to be active because, gosh darn it, it hurts to be active, and I don't have the energy to do that, which feeds into problem number 1, nutrition. The third thing I look at I think is incredibly important is sleep. We are a sleep-deprived nation, and so I talk to people and get at what are your hygiene habits? Are you giving enough time for sleep? Most people, I'd say 70% of who I interview, do not get proper rest, and it's not quality rest. And the fourth is really emotional well-being and centered. What are you doing to truly take care of yourself? Because to take care of others in life, you have to take care of yourself first. So we really focus over a holistic standpoint, looking at the entire forest and all the trees that make up that forest to say this is your goal in your journey, and we're going to help you get there.
You were offering Danielle Mitchell of Chattanooga Sports Institute an antidote to the industrial model of healthcare, which turns people effectively into cattle. They're merely physical beings. There's no soul, there's no person, there's no personality, there's no history really. They're just physical objects that are biological systems that need care. Something is out of whack. Your goal recently revealed here in Chattanooga is to have a membership model. That's the premier way of having a relationship. You have a maximum of about 700 or 800 possible people or families that you can deal with in this model. Right now, you say that physicians like you have up to 2,000 people that they have to have as clients just to get them to get payments and to get the herd moving through the halls of the medical practice into the waiting rooms or the visitation rooms.
Yeah, so there really is this bigger issue, I think, that's going on, which, and a lot of times when I talk to my colleagues in medicine, I think I'm a rarity in the fact that I'm also an independent business owner. And so I see what's going on firsthand with the insurance model. Most physicians who are employed by corporate medicine entities have no clue. They code for a visit, meaning that they assign a charge basis for the visit, but they never actually get to see like what is the outcome of their work that they do on that visit. I see it. And then I also have the displeasure of having to fight insurance companies and pay a third party to spend every amount of their time fighting these claims to get the money back on the services we've provided, which also increases the cost of medicine. So in this model with Steph, what we're attempting to do is to get away from, I think, that paternalistic model of how insurance has really taken over everything, and get people to realize that just because you are mandated to buy insurance, that is not access, that's not healthcare. That is access to healthcare. And even then, people are not able to afford to access care because it's so astronomically expensive, which again is impacted by the insurance healthcare model.
Well, what Danielle Mitchell, what are the disincentives that are in the back of my listener's mind? He's hearing what you're saying about going into a cash practice where he pays you $600 a year in 3 installments to have access to 4 30-minute office visits per year. He has disincentives which say, well, boy, I don't think I can do that. I'm in insurance. Address his hesitations to think that what you're doing is really a benefit to him. Address these what he might think are problems in the relationships that he has now with his insurance company through his employer, and he's stuck there until the enrollment window opens again later this year.
Right. So, to look at like what are the separate disadvantages that people might think of, like how do I bridge this gap? How do I get to this model, and what's going to stop me from going into this model? Number one, a lot of employers provide insurance for their employees. And a lot of people say, you know what? I have wonderful insurance. Like, why would I want to actually go into a model that I'm going to pay more for when I can pay like a $25 copay and that's it? Well, number one, models such as what we call, or the government has labeled, Cadillac healthcare insurance models. In 2018, this is potentially a very big year for healthcare insurance because we are looking at a potential 40% excise tax that is going to be passed along to these Cadillac plans, meaning that the employers are going to be hit with a 40% excise tax. Those plans may potentially be going away, and we're already seeing it. Classic models of employees that used to have wonderful insurance, which are now having big issues with what they're paying and the services that they're getting back out of that. Teachers, I've never heard teachers really in like the last decade complain about the insurance that they're offered with stuff, but I've now heard college professors, these big entities that were classically very well covered, are now struggling and saying, my deductible is like $6,000 and I have never had to pay that before. And then they're going into these healthcare institutions that then are providing less quality care face-to-face with stuff, and they're having poorer healthcare outcomes. So that's one thing to look at. And I think the second thing to look at is how whenever you are spending that time with your provider, people think, how am I going to, how is this model going to save me money? Well, you look at the long-term costs. You're paying potentially less on a monthly premium if you drop to a catastrophic coverage plan, if you're a healthy person and can do that. And the second thing, you can actually have a quality interaction with your provider, because again, the provider that's going to take the time to show you how to dissolve these other stress issues that are going on in your life, whether it's poor eating, whether it's lack of activity, there's a provider there that's actually going to educate you on how to do that, so you don't get the prescription for the diabetic meds, so you don't get the prescription for the cholesterol medicines. It's such a quick in and out, easy fix system right now, and that is sick care. That is not health care.
So sick care implies that, what does that imply? Just preventing you from getting sick as opposed to being healthy?
Sick care is, you're not in it for the preventative standpoint. You're not trying to avoid the bad outcome in the first place. Real healthcare, preventative healthcare, is looking at what is causing this healthcare outcome. Why did you get diagnosed with type 2 diabetes? Well, okay, let's start looking at this. You're eating 80% or more of your diet coming from processed foods. You're not working out at least 150 minutes a week at a moderate intensity. You're not treating yourself well in terms of sleep. You get 4 to 5 hours of sleep a night. And by the way, your emotional status with stuff and the way that you're connecting with the things that are important around you, which by the way are things that don't have, things that do have a pulse. Those are what you want to connect with. Things that don't have a pulse, you need to lessen the connection.
You mean consumer goods and gadgets and
exactly,
speedboats.
So really trying to get people to understand, what is it to have true quality of life? And so I'm really trying to help educate people on that.
Well, this is David Tulis. We're talking with Danielle Mitchell, a physician who owns and runs Chattanooga Sports Institute. No doubt a growing practice as more people want to shift out of the insurance model to the cash model, to the concierge model, to the prescription model. What happened in your career, Danielle, that made you realize that you couldn't continue as you were going? Was there a moment that you saw something, you had an interview with someone, or you spoke to an older doctor who gave you some advice? What happened to convince you that you had to make this bold step, which certainly is full of many headaches and additional duties and chores as a businesswoman?
Yeah, so that actually this journey and this process of creating the Chattanooga Sports Institute actually stems back from my experiences in 2007 and how I went through my own lifestyle change with stuff. Having lost 100 pounds and going on to be a successful triathlete with stuff, I really looked at what was different about my experience. And it was certainly embracing nutrition and then activity and emotional well-being, sleep as part of that. But then trying to figure out, when people started coming to my practice, even as a resident physician in training in family medicine, and then later on in non-operative orthopedic sports medicine, I found out that people were not getting, with other providers, the educational impact that I was having, with not only in my own life, but then certainly with them. And I realized as I went on then to become an employed physician, at first in corporate medicine, that this exchange was happening so quickly. And there's these interesting things that happen when, as a physician, if I'm seeing, 30 and 40 patients a day, then suddenly I'm not happy, because I'm not having a relationship with my patients. I'm not able to talk about those things that are important. The other thing I think that happens within that is when you look at people who are physicians now, the corollary, there's two very startling realities. The burnout rate right now amongst physicians is 52%. That's startling. That means that 1 in 2 physicians that you see is thinking about leaving or is already in transit out of our healthcare system, which is, it's a disaster, because we are already at a shortage of physicians right now, especially in primary care. And so physicians are tired of this. The second corollary, which is so dramatic, and this is very sad, when you look at suicide completion rates amongst all professions, physicians are number 1 across the board now. Yeah. And I've actually, in my short years of practice, I graduated med school in 2006, and I've been at this now for almost a decade. I've known 2 people in my profession who have completed suicide.
So and I'm glad you're bringing this up about suicide rates, Danielle Mitchell. It seems like the profession has sold its soul to bureaucracy, to the government, And what happens then is really just alienation, kind of a separation from the whole, the people who are there. They're no longer human beings anymore. There's not really a possibility of having a relationship with the patient, getting to know any patient or his family history or anything like that. There is such a, you're in a machine that is demanding that you produce, demanding that you get people in, out of your visitation bay. And so there's this alienation. And is that why are these doctors killing themselves because of their anomie, their alienation from the system, or are there other reasons? Are they on medication or something? What's the reason for this huge rate?
I try to keep my finger on the pulse in terms of, as you get to know me with stuff, and my patients will certainly say the same thing. I'm very honest about what's going on, I think, within our lives with stuff. And in looking at my colleagues who are also in the profession, I think so many of them are dissatisfied with the way that the quote unquote institution is being run right now. And that's corporate medicine model with stuff. And I can't sit there and point a finger and say it's corporate medicine, this big, arch evil enemy with stuff. It really is this big complicated system where you have the interplay between the current insurance payer system. You have the interplay with, corporate medicine and how they drive productivity. An interesting corollary to this, most people don't know this. Have you ever asked how a physician in a corporate medicine model gets paid?
No.
This is fascinating. So most physicians in a corporate medicine model now are contracted on what's called productivity. So whenever you sign up, your first year, you typically don't have to meet any numbers, because numbers in terms of how many patients do you see on a daily basis or over that yearly basis. And you're building your practice. But after the first year, then they come back and put you onto what's called productivity.
That is to say, the employer of the doctor, right? The practice,
Yes.
The corporation which
Exactly.
bought him out.
Exactly. So the employer at that point, in that usual second year of practice and beyond, then will say, okay, this is your goal for how many patients we think you should be seeing in a day. And if you don't meet that goal, we're going to cut your salary at the end of that year by X amount of dollars. So suddenly you have physicians that are like, oh my gosh, I have to see this many patients in this many hours of the day over this period of year. So now their salary and their livelihood is literally based on, can I see this many patients? Here's where I think the ethics of this also get really ugly, is that some physicians are actually given productivity incentives. So if you actually see, if the employer comes in and says, you know what, you have to see X amount of patients in a year just to meet your base salary. But you know what, if you're really, really fast and you see more patients than X, then we're going to give you a bonus. So suddenly you have this machine that's created where people try to see as many patients as they can in the shortest amount of period of time, because it actually increases their bottom dollar.
So they have forgotten the Hippocratic Oath.
Yeah, essentially. And do I say that all physicians do this? Absolutely not. I would say 95% of all the physicians that I work with are absolutely wonderful people who really do have health care, and the care of their patients is their number one priority. In fact, if you look at family practice, which is one of the most underpaid specialties out there in medicine, my colleagues and I and myself in this practice of family medicine, we're in it because we're there to take care of people. But there comes a point where you have to also take care of your doctor. So we are able to actually be happy doing that.
We're talking with Dr. Danielle Mitchell of Chattanooga Sports Institute. So give my listener a quick rundown of the kind of care you give at the Institute, Danielle.
So the type of care that we focus on is holistic. A lot of times when people come in and you see your doctor, it's not just about the arm pain or the wrist pain or the stress that you feel from that. It's the whole body. It's the whole person. Our medical care system and corporate medicine model and the sick care model has become so compartmentalized. Oh, you have like a finger issue, go see the orthopedist. Oh, you have stress issues, go see the psychiatrist. Oh, you have problems with diabetes, go see the diabetic family physician or the endocrinologist. What we're attempting to do, and family medicine I think is really great at doing, is being able to incorporate all of those issues into your visits with stuff, so you are having things addressed from one angle, one person that you have continuity with. We make the referrals when we need to, but we really, my practice at the Chattanooga Sports Institute, we are really vested in wanting to treat the whole person and not just a part of the person.
This is David Tulis. Our show explores this very, very theme that small is better than big, and that simple is better than complex. And then there's a third a third point here in local economy in our examination of it, that near is better than far. And it seems that Danielle Mitchell and a very small body of physicians here in Chattanooga are discovering local economy. And in the footnotes, it would be this, that personal is better than corporate, and that physical is better than abstract. And so what you're describing, Danielle, in the corporate industrial model of healthcare and payments for healthcare is that people have forgotten what are essentially local economy arguments. They think that abstract is more important than physical. In other words, the number is more important than the individual patient. They think that corporate obligations are better than personal obligations that they have with the patient. And the other points as well, you're proposing to really have a simpler life yourself as a doctor, and your business is really about having simple relationships and not having a complex mechanical sphere around your building.
Yeah, so one of my favorite things that summarizes, I think, your point perfectly is in life, one of my life mantras is, you don't have to make a killing in life, you just have to make enough. And to be able to have that interaction with patients and have the quality relationship, that's where it's all about.
Danielle Mitchell, how can my listener contact you?
Our phone number is 423-875-1005. You can find us on the web at www.chattanoogasportsinstitute.com and on Facebook.